Welcome back to part 2 of my chat with Andrew Geldert. Andrew is a former soldier who lost his way after leaving the army. We left Andrew in part 1 having been shot in the chest and neck in a bikie bar room brawl and being targeted by an undercover police officer for a large-scale drug dealing. Andrew, welcome back.
Thanks, Gary.
I'm sorry, mate. We didn't leave you in a real good place at the end of part 1, but I promise people it's an interesting story in the way that you turned your life around. So it's all not doom and gloom. But can we talk about the shooting incident? What happened there?
Yeah, so out partying, having the time of my life that night, and was already seriously involved in both the underworld and outlaw motorcycle club. I was not a member, never was a member, by the way.
Yep.
Wasn't even a nominee member. So this was outside of the time that I was formally joined up. But I was aligned at that point in time, had some very close mates there, and was already on the track to heading that way and being a committed outlaw motorcycle club identity and member. And this time I wasn't. So hanging out with a mate, he was a nom for the club, and we were very close. And another rival group came into the nightclub that night. And long story short, there was an altercation between my mate and one of their members, and another one of them went to step in on my mate, and of course I couldn't have that. So yeah, I stepped in, and this particular gentleman, a lot bigger than me, but he knew of me and knew that I could handle myself. Didn't want to throw the fists, and stepped back and pulled out a handgun from his belt line and waved it around, and then stepped back, thinking that we'd either run or not want to go on with it.
Yeah.
And stuck it up under his shirt, and so I thought he's bluffing, and that only, I guess, pissed me off some more that he pulled a gun on us.
Yeah.
Because it was just a fair one-on-one fight. This is what I'm thinking at the time. So after he put it up under his shirt, I was thinking he's not going to use it. So I closed the gap to a meter or two where I could start letting fly, and he pulled it back out and let 6 shots go. And I just remember being so close to him, seeing the muzzle flash, and then being struck in the chest. It was the wind got taken out of me like a hot knife being thrown straight through my body and through my chest. And as I'd gone over, I didn't know at the time, but another one whistled straight through my sort of through my trap area. Lost all perspective of what was going on, and that my other mate had been shot as well. But as soon as I'd been shot, I just doubled over, and the lights came on. There was screaming. Everyone was running for cover because within a couple of seconds there was 6 shots let go. So yeah, lights on, music going, and I'm just, all I could do was hobble out to the front area where the opening was, the front door was, and bring to the attention that I'd been shot and that I needed some help. So,
well, it sounds almost like an out of body experience watching it. Like when you're going through that, did you comprehend what was happening?
Look, at the time, supercharged on adrenaline, willing to basically put your life on the line for your brother or for your buddy, and it's fight or flight. And up until the trigger is pulled, it's all fun and games, and it's a fight, and so what? But when the gun's shot, things all of a sudden take a pretty serious dive, and shock kicks in because you don't expect that. And it's like anything, you don't expect the worst outcome, and that's why you probably put you're akin to putting yourself in that situation. And for me, it was just a natural response and reaction up until the time I'm laying there looking down at my chest, thinking I'm in a bit of trouble here.
Yeah. Was it a wake up call for you?
No.
Talk me through that, because I just want to put you on the spot here, Andrew. I'm thinking, okay, you're a smart bloke, and life's going this way, and I've just been shot twice. I know I am so lucky that I'm still alive, because if it was half a centimetre this way or that way, it could have been a completely different story, or you might have had life permanent disabilities. Did it cross your mind that maybe this isn't the way to go, or did it just fuel the anger in you? Or I'm trying to understand why that's not enough of a warning for you.
No, it's great question, and but it didn't for me at the time. It fueled my anger, and it sort of, I guess, cemented my role and my will to back my mate or my brother to the degree that was expected of me. So again, I became looked at as someone that was willing to walk that line, and so it just cemented my position and my role and my character in that world. But I remember it wasn't probably 3 days after I'd got out of hospital. I spent nearly 2 weeks in intensive care. They sewed me up the first time, and they didn't know that my liver was leaking bile into my stomach, and I became very green and poisoned. So I was back into surgery. They opened me back up again, pulled my stomach out, put a drain on my liver, and I was back out. So after 2 rounds of surgery, I'd lost 10 or 12 kilos, and I was withering away. So I was lucky to survive, but I remember getting home, and because I had about 50 staples through the center of my stomach, and I couldn't quite stand upright to stretch the scar tissue. And my mate rocked up on the doorstep on a Friday night, and I've just got home and I'm relaxing. He goes, get your gear on. I said, what do you mean? He goes, get dressed. So I threw some clothes on, skinny and frail and feeling weak. He's pulled me into the car. We've driven back to the same nightclub where there's a procession of bouncers standing at the front who walked us in, surrounded us. We walked in, and we walked to the corner of the nightclub exactly at the location that we were shot. We stood there arm in arm, and he looked at me and said, you right? I said, yeah, I'm right. And it was like, that was our way to get back on the horse, so to speak.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, we're right here. We got shot, but look at us. We're standing here right in this place where we got shot. And I found it really healing. It just gave me the ability to confront the whole situation. And of course there was anger, there was, retribution, there was all these other things tied up, and interesting journey for the gentleman that shot us, because very public, the journey that he took, both in prison and later on being shot dead actually by a Vietnam veteran. So yeah, that was just an interesting journey.
The bloke that shot you, he got convicted for it, the shooting.
He did, yeah. He got sentenced to 9.5 years for that, yeah.
Yeah, and then he ended up at the wrong end of the gun as well.
He did. He was burnt in prison, seriously.
Yeah.
I actually met the guy inside that burnt him. And the fuel they used, they didn't know at the time, but to stop the inhalation of the toxic petrol, they actually mixed their fuel with some sort of methylated spirits. And when they doused him, he actually went up like a lot more seriously than what they ever thought, and that nearly took his life.
Sorry, Andrew, just covering off on that he was, and these was one of these very violent prison attacks where he was set alight in prison.
That's right. That's right. So for whatever reason, he was significantly burnt. Survived that luckily, and he got out and got tied up with a particular gentleman. He threatened to kill him, and the other guy, and this is all very public information too, by the way. The other guy wasn't going to wait for him, and has rocked up to confront him, and ended up shooting him dead. And he went there. It was either I spoke to the guy. I actually met him in prison. I did time with him.
Yeah.
He spoke about the event, and he copped his time, and he said it was me or him, and it wasn't going to be me. So yeah.
Okay. So this is the world you're dabbling in, and I think that's just a nice little, well, not nice, but an anecdote of what this world is about. That's where I sit back here and think, you're a smart person, but this is what you're buying into. I take on board what you're saying too. After you survive the shooting, it almost, you feel like, okay, this is me. I've shown I can take the bullet, and I'm still standing, and I can see. And I've spoken to other people that have been on the wrong end of a gun in outlaws, and it's almost like it emboldens them. It's okay, I am as tough as people think, and start to trade off the reputation, the invincibility.
Absolutely, and I ran towards the guy with a gun. I mean, anyone would think that's either really staunch or really stupid. And in our world, it was what you did.
It was staunch and respected.
Exactly. You're exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. So, shot out. You've gone back to the club. It's making a public statement, and I would imagine in the way you described it, helping the healing process to a degree too, because it's a traumatic thing. No matter who you are, if you've been shot, there's trauma that's associated with it, and it's confronting. But it hasn't turned you off a life of crime, and then you've got involved in drug importation, and you had an undercover cop infiltrate whatever you were doing.
Yeah, that's right. Later on down the track, it was actually fair while after that. I became a nominee member of the club. Was still conducting my activities and became even more involved in that. Um, by the way, this is outside of the club, so it was my own activities.
Yeah.
I take full accountability for that, and it was no one else's decision or fault bar mine. So yeah, it was heavily entrenched, and the crew that was my street crew effectively was infiltrated by an undercover police operator, who ended up netting me through my links to the street crew, started buying significant quantities of cocaine at the time from me, and wound up with me being charged.
Were you, at the time of being charged, were you living the good life? Was there money and yeah?
Oh, absolutely. Again, heavily entrenched, right on the cusp of becoming a fully patched member and living the high life. There was money, there was trips, there was the accolades, there was the notoriety that
Yeah.
comes with that lifestyle and reaching the upper echelons and wanting to be, I guess, seen that way as well. So yeah, there was all the bells and whistles that goes with living on that side of the fence for sure.
Your family, up and just touch on this just before we talk about the rest. Family, friends, were you in a relationship at the time?
Was in a relationship, a long-term committed relationship. I'd been with her since I was 21, and she was in the lifestyle with me as much as she could be, because obviously, your partners are on the fringes of that lifestyle,
Yeah.
so to speak. So yeah, I was in a relationship. I had uh, my son. My son was 3 at the time of that we're talking about,
Yeah.
and just before going away. And I remember at the time I was charged, my partner was pregnant with our second child, my daughter, and I was lucky to see her birth, because not long after I was gone.
That's what people there's the crime, but then there's the punishment of being taken away from that. And I see so many people that have spoken to so many people that they lose contact with their family, their kids, and it's just the lost years. A 3-year-old and a newborn, and you ended up getting sentenced. It was 7 years, I think. You got 7 years on top.
Yeah, I did. Went to court, obviously, through the trial, and ended up with being found guilty and sentenced to 7 years. And yeah, I was very, very lucky, Gary, and I'll honor my ex-partner for how she stood by me through that time. I ended up doing 5 years to the day, and she was very, very supportive. I got to see my kids every single weekend, and ended up in minimum security from 6 months of maximum. They assessed me and said, "You're going to medium." And I said, "Look, is there a chance I could get to minimum?" I said, "I just want to do my time." And they reassessed me, and luckily enough for me, I was able to get to minimum security. So I had contact with my kids every weekend, and as the journey progressed, just wanting to become more of a leader and role model for my kids than anything.
What's it like being inside with your children coming to visit you? How did it make you feel?
It is difficult, and I remember there's a time where we would be pulled away from our family, and I remember sitting behind the door close to the visitor center, and my son ran up to the grill, and I'm talking to him through the grill, and I was just being inspiring to him and saying, "Hey, I'm still here. I still love you." And I was trying not to cry, because I was in a room full of prisoners. It is very, very tough, and they were a very, very big inspiration for me to want to become a better man from that experience. Lucky enough, being in minimum security, just to have access to my kids, just to be able to pick the phone up. And there was a time actually where I was overcompensating as a father, and I realized that I was fathering from the place of guilt, putting them through what I went through as a
That's
kid.
interesting. Yeah.
So when I became aware of that, I started to really take an approach of gratitude, just to be able to pick up the phone and speak to them, rather than try and control the situation or tell them what to do. Just be humble and grateful that I've got an interaction with them. So yeah, it was tough, but again, very, very blessed to have that interaction with my kids, and then being able to get out and be a part of their life as well. So and
Yeah.
and they were young too. So again, I'm not saying that that was something that I would choose on them in any other situation. But they were young enough for me to get in and out and put back that relationship.
And your relationship with them now?
It's fantastic. I'm lucky enough to have my kids full time.
Yeah.
My son is 16 and my daughter's 12, and their mum does fly in, fly out. So I've got my kids full time, and I couldn't be any more humble and grateful for the relationship that I have with my beautiful kids at the moment. So
that's fantastic.
But yeah, certainly, it was a time when the judge dropped the hammer and made that sentence that I knew my life was at a crossroad. And even going back a step to being pulled over, I was being followed, I was being tailed, and I was dropping my son down
at the arrest. Yep.
At the arrest, yeah. So I was dropping my son to daycare. They actually let me drop him off. I'm not sure if they let me or they just saw me stop.
Yeah.
But not long after that, they've surrounded me. Being an ex-cop of yourself, how it goes.
Yeah.
Surrounding the guns are out and
Yep.
on the ground in the middle of a busy street, and it was taken away from there. And there was, looking back, it was almost like this sense of relief that that this period of this moment had come, because it was a time where I had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. It was time to face up.
That's interesting. You call it a sense of relief, because your life has changed forever at that particular point in time. Is it the relief from the pressure of always wondering when it's going to happen, if it's going to happen?
I think you're exactly right. It was living on the edge, so much so that you're wondering what's going to happen next, and living life on the edge for that amount of time has its impact. And I didn't realize this till later on, but at the time, living on the edge, being so angry, being so wound up, it takes a lot of energy. It was draining, and like I say, that sense of relief was, hey, I've got something else to deal with now, but it's not that, so it's not probably as bad. And what am I going to do with this, right? So
yeah, I understand, and I've seen a lot of bad guys talk about how relaxing life can be when you're not looking over your shoulder, because I haven't done anything wrong. You're not worried about the cops kicking the door in or grabbing you after you've dropped your son off at daycare.
Absolutely.
Going into jail the first time, you hadn't done jail, you hadn't done boys' homes or jail before, so
no jails, no boys' home. First experience was being transported from court to the maximum security facility here in Perth, and I didn't know at the time, but I was put straight down the back because I was OMCG related. They wanted to assess me and know where my affiliations were and who they could put me with and who they couldn't put me with. So I was down the back, and I just remember looking at this little concrete cell and thinking, wow, potentially 7 years in a place in this cell is going to be a bit of fun. And I didn't know that I was in segregation. And after 3 days, they pulled me aside. Obviously, wanted to make sure that I knew what the worst state of existing in prison could be, because I spent 3 days potentially down the back, or it was in isolation. And they got me out and said, right, where are you at, who you're aligned with, who you're affiliated with. And I said, look, as far as I'm concerned, I just want to get on with my time. And they released me into the general population of maximum security. And did my best to try and assimilate and acclimatize and get my bearings and adjust. A significant period of adjustment to what is a change that, again, no one can prepare you for.
No, you can't. And I don't care who you are. If you say it doesn't have an impact, it has an impact on anyone that is put into that situation that's confronting. The watershed moment in reading your chapter in the book, that I see it as when you've decided to change, because you've actually owned your mistakes, is when you had an appeal coming in, and I think you got on a phone, you were talking on the phone, one of the prison phones, to your solicitor, and the appeal was rejected, and you knew you were going to spend the next 5-7 years or whatever it was in prison. And I think you described as you just literally dropped the phone and the tear coming down your eyes, realising this is what your life is going to be. But at that point in time too, you also changed your outlook on things and thought, well, I've got to start owning this. I can't make excuses, blame others, blame my upbringing, blame anyone else. I've got myself in here, and I'm going to get myself out of here.
Exactly what it is. Exactly what it was, Gary. And for me, there was still that glimmer of hope in my appeal that I was going to get out and, get back on with life. I'm not sure how that was going to look, but for me, there was still that glimmer of hope. And when the appeal was formally rejected and I had to face or turn and face, I remember that phone call and I hung up, and it was very, very quickly thereafter that I remember consciously thinking to myself, right, I am here now. There is absolutely nothing I can do about this. And I'm either going to, one, use it to become more entrenched, or two, I'm going to use every single minute of every single day to become the best person that I can possibly be. And I chose the latter. And every single day and every single minute and every single second that I was there, I was exploring myself. I took myself back to the little innocent child that was, exposed to the family breakup and the trauma. And I chose very, very consciously to take a deep dive into the person that I'd become. I mean, here I am looking at 7 years of imprisonment. It's not going to be 6 months or 12 months. It's not. Yeah. We're not dealing with a playground sentence here, and we call them overnighters, where you watch people come into prison and they're laughing about their sentence because they've only got a couple of months or 6 months or 12 months, and I had year on year to consider. So for me, it was just enough time. I remember getting transported from maximum security to minimum security and getting up to Warraloo, which, from a concrete jungle to Warraloo, it's a farm. It's a prison farm. There were gum trees, there were birds, there were old growth roses. It's an old leprosy camp up there, and
on the hills outside of Perth.
That's right, in the hills up in Perth. And I just got there and thought, you know what, this is beauty. This is what I could call home. This is where I can feel, because in maximum security, you're in fight or flight. It's very, very tense. It's the atmosphere is thick. Whereas in minimum security, which I leapt medium security, luckily enough, and I was just able to relax in myself enough to explore myself and again make that conscious decision to say, you know what, maybe instead of this being punishment, maybe this is something that is absolutely right for me. I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to start owning the fact that I have done wrong and not try and deny the fact that I have done wrong, which up to that point I was. And it was time to turn and face me. And I did that, Gary. I did that with everything that I had done, and stop blaming, my childhood, stop blaming, the stepdad or the situation, and stop playing the victim to my situation and to my crime, especially. And I want to tell a beautiful story, and I love this story because it helped me understand the impact that my decisions were having. And I was lucky enough to have an interaction with two prison chaplains, two beautiful men, who were very contrasting to me. Never talked God, never Bible bashed me, just were very genuine people who walked around and checked on people and said, "Hi, how you going?" And I really resonated with these two men, and they were like a beacon of light for me. And they helped me to get onto a course. It was called the Sycamore Tree Program, and it was a victims of crime course. Yep. And it was one of the last victims of crime courses that was shut down. They lost funding, and I was lucky to be one of the 10 prisoners out of the whole prison to be selected to go onto this course. And there were an elderly couple that came in, and we're all sitting around, and we got to listen to them talk about their story, and they spoke and told us the journey of them being a victim of crime, and their son was brutally murdered by a drug addict and drug dealer who lived above him in a set of apartments. He's playing his music really loud one night, and he's come down with a knife and brutally stabbed him to death over 30 times, and they're bawling their eyes out. And this happened 10 or 15 years before. And number one, I connected to the drug dealer because I was a drug dealer, and it could have been me dealing drugs to him. Yeah. So I could have contributed to that guy's, their son's death. So their emotion impacted me, but it wasn't so much their emotion. It was the story that happened after, how they'd become the product of the hate of the man that took their son's life. And for many, many years, they were living as the victim to their son's life being taken. And when it came for the guy that took their son's life to be released on parole, they were writing letters. They went public about he should never be released. He should rot in jail. And they became very hateful and spiteful. And that defined them and defined their life. And it wasn't until they had a friend turn around to them and say, you know that you have become the product of the exact hate that took your son's life.
Yeah.
That they realized that that was exactly true. And they went about embarking on a journey of forgiveness for this particular gentleman. They wrote to him in prison. They went to meet him in prison. They hugged him. They supported his release, and they took him in to their home upon his release. And
Amazing.
he became the replacement for the son that he took the life of. And for me, I'm sitting here watching this couple tell this amazing journey, this amazing story, and I've got tears coming out of my eyes, and I just remember thinking, you know what? If you can forgive him, imagine what I can do with that forgiveness, that sense of forgiveness. And for me, it was an epiphany, because I was, I was studying a university degree. I was trying to put myself back together. I was trying to understand my decisions, take accountability. And here I was with a new definition of forgiveness.
Yeah.
So I went back and I forgave my stepfather for what he did. I forgave, anybody that ever hurt me, all of the mums, my mum for doing what she did, my dad for doing what he did. And then the forgiveness of myself. I turned that forgiveness, and I remember, speaking to the prison chaplain about what I dealt with. And it was the first time I'd done that, and I was delving into my own vulnerability, and I was scared. I was supposed to be this big wannabe tough guy, and here I was being vulnerable to this beautiful man, this beautiful prison chaplain, about why I was so angry, and being vulnerable to that. And I just remember having this sense of, hey, I'm getting this. This is making sense to me, and diving into that vulnerability. I felt scared, and here I was, this big wannabe tough man, and courage for me, Gary, in that moment changed. I thought, here I was thinking courage was the prowess of ego, one man versus another. And here I was with no courage, because I couldn't tell a story of what happened to me as a little boy. So courage really changed. The definition of courage changed for me in that moment. But it was in diving into that vulnerability and telling that story that I began to set myself free from the shackles of the victim mentality of what happened to me. And then listening to this beautiful couple tell of the forgiveness. And so, number one, I was ready to own. I took full and complete ownership of all the mistakes that I've made, of all the people that I've hurt. And you can't forgive anything that we don't own, right? So ownership was a huge number one. And I've told this healing journey in books, and as a part of my coaching now, that you cannot forgive anything within yourself or another that you can't wholly own. And that was even owning the actions of my stepfather, right? Because I'd become the victim to him. If I take the ownership from him and I claim it as my ownership, I don't give him permission to impact me from his brokenness, his own brokenness. I saw his brokenness, not the soul that he was, because he became the product of his broken environment too, right? He became really easy to forgive because he wasn't a light soul. He was the product of his broken past too. So all these components started coming to me in prison, and the prison guards were testing me and treating me like I was, like they didn't want me in minimum security. And there was all these tests coming up, and they were flat out. And all I saw was these challenges being turned into opportunities for me. I was like celebrated. I was the captain of the prison footy team at the time, and coming back on the bus, they were throwing things at the bus driver and calling him names, just as an example. I got off the bus, and being the captain of the footy team, they said, down the back with you. He said, what did you do to stop that? And I said, listen, I'm a prisoner. I'm not going to put myself in that situation. I'm here on a journey. I didn't want anything to do with it. But they needed to show that that they were dealing with the situation effectively, right? So they said, I'm in the middle of my university degree. They said, you're going away for 28 days. They said, you're going to Greenock. And Greenock is even worse than any maximum security you can think. They said they needed to make an example out of me. I remember going up to Greenock, and I got there. I was down the back in segregation for 28 days, and I remember ringing my partner and saying to her, "Listen, guess what? Tell the kids I love them. I'm off. I got to go. I got something I got to do." And I jumped on the bus, and I'm on this little prison transport, thinking this is going to be a long ride to Greenock. These lefts and rights, I sort of took my jumper off and getting comfortable, and we put into Skipper's Aviation, and they're taking us out on the tarmac, and I was actually shackled up, and we flew up there in this plane. Here I'm in this plane at 30,000 feet, eating this sandwich, getting flown to Greenock for 28 days for something I didn't do, right? But it was, again, this beautiful opportunity where I got to say, they're testing me here, and this is a time where I can understand this is just a part of the journey and grow through it, or I can react to it, and they can reinforce the person that they want to see. So you see, as I was transforming and gone through this amazing journey, inside, all these catalysts were helping me to become the fullest expression of the person that I knew I was always born to become. So my prison journey was a very, very beautiful and very, very profound journey.
It's powerful, and I didn't interrupt you because what you're saying is just so powerful in so many different levels. Getting back to the parents of their murdered son, that always blows me away. Like the time I've had in homicide and how people can channel their anger into something positive. And I've had victims, family members of victims say, the anger will destroy me if I hang on to it. I'm still upset by what's happened, but I'm going to turn that anger into something positive. And then you've changed your mindset. Like how powerful that is. Not your environment. You're still in prison, but you changed your mindset, and all of a sudden the world's a completely different place.
And trust me, it didn't happen overnight. And I was lucky that I had year on year. I went right back, Gary, to testing myself, not swearing in conversations, not slandering people, not being not my journey not being defined by the social clique in prison. Because here I started interacting with the prison chaplains. I was going to prison psychologists, and for the local prison population to see me, this serious drug, commercial drug trafficker, OMCG related guy, interacting with what were seen as the authorities in this manner. It took a lot of courage for me to break that social clique and say, no, I'm taking my own journey here. So yeah, it was head first, and not swearing, not slandering, not engaging. It became a lonely journey, but again, a very profound journey, because I found myself, connecting to the beauty of the journey, and rather than the darkness of it, or even buying into prison officers' own darkness, because they're on their own journey in there. So,
well, it takes a lot of understanding, but other people seeing you do that, they would be threatened by that in a way, in that we're going to lose you to your journey. We want you to be one of us, because that we're all in this together, and seeing someone that can actually break the shackles, literally and figuratively, away from prison, and just take a more positive step in life. You touched on something too, and I think this is important, especially speaking to a bloke like yourself. No one can question you on your physical toughness, but the real courage is to express your emotions. Acknowledge fear, acknowledge your emotions. And in the world that you've been in, whether it's maximum security or army, or hanging out with outlaw motorcycle gangs, that's something that people don't want. They put up this false shield. It's almost like this protection layer around them. They don't want to show their vulnerability, but we're all vulnerable if you strip it down and get to talking. And you've identified that. That takes a real courage to show that you're vulnerable and open up about your emotions.
Yeah, exactly, Gary. And that's the stigma that we're trying to break. I mean, later on down the track, and progressing into what I'm doing now and the contribution that I'm making now, it's breaking the stigma to know that there is courage in vulnerability and strength in vulnerability. And it's counterintuitive, because everything in you is saying, don't talk about that, bury that, pretend it doesn't exist. You're not there anymore. But it's the burying of that emotion, and the burying of trauma, and not the releasing of it and dealing with it appropriately, that defines it absolutely defines characters. But it's not the truest sense of ourself. So without dealing with that and releasing that effectively, we're governed by it. You're still held back by something that happened 5, 10, 20 years ago. That's frightening to me. And the outcomes that we're seeing in terms of the numbers of suicides, both male and female, it's a lot higher in males, because we do have this ego, the holding on, and the will to not be vulnerable. So yeah, we're seeing some incredible statistics around the impacts of not dealing with our emotions and not releasing our emotions effectively. So yeah, and it was obviously a huge catalyst in my journey, was leaning into that, and having the courage to say, this is scaring the heck out of me right now. I don't want to feel like I want to dive into this vulnerability. But as soon as I did, I realized that I just felt lighter, and it was like my internal system had a birthday, and I knew then that the outcome of that feeling and leaning into that feeling was exactly what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that you got to discover it. Bringing back to a quote that you said, my freedom had to be taken away so that I could become free. So there's an irony to it, but it's very much what appears to have happened. And just imagine what your life would have been if you got up on the appeal. You wouldn't have learnt your lesson. If you got up on your appeal and got released, you'd be going, here I am, I've been shot, I've been in prison, I beat the courts, I beat the system, and your life might have taken a completely different path. The day that you were released, what were your ambitions and goals when you walked, when they opened the gates and said, okay?
So by that time, we're talking 5 years between the time that I'd gone away till I got out. I found a balance. I found a sense of self. I'd always been told as a kid that I had an immense potential, but was never realizing it. But here I was with this new mental balance, this new approach, this new perspective on life. And I was like a bull at a gate. I got out. I had a full business degree. I had 3 TAFE diplomas and a whole new perspective on life. So I really got out to make my mark and to realize my full potential. I launched into work and business. I was lucky enough to be selected before I got out in a work release program. Again, special thanks to the prison chaplains who connected with another prison chaplain in Toll, the big transport company. Yep. So I was getting released to go to work, and every day I was working like as hard as I possibly could at what I did. And I got out with that same approach. I got a job with a mining services company, worked my way up from on the ground to supervisor, then to project manager with my education, of course. And I'd been in business before, but now I had the right approach and some skill sets to support that role. Worked my way into project management very quickly. Progressed from that role into my own business because I was fly in, fly out. Wanted to get back to the family because I'd been away from them long enough. Yeah, so got back and from fly in, fly out and bought another business, acquired another business, and we built a multi-million-dollar construction business. And this was just pre-COVID, thinking that, yep, me being a managing director and all the accolades and all the money and, that was, I just thought that was the mark I was going to make. And unfortunately, the business failed. And at the same time my business failed, I lost my 18-year relationship because she'd had enough of the decisions that I was making, and I'd put her through enough. And the business failure was something that she didn't support, that I went out and did. And that was another huge catalyst for me because, the business failing and losing my relationship, I effectively walked out of home with a duffel bag. This is only 2 years of getting out.
Yeah.
And here I am at a crossroad again, having to learn another hard lesson. Wasn't quite as impactful, but again, another beautiful catalyst in my life to find what I was truly meant to be doing here. So,
well, you've learnt some lessons from that. Like, so this is 2 years out of prison, and you've had the business. You're like a bull at the gate, getting everything up and running, and then I've put this under the heading of self-reflection and lessons learnt from that period of time, and that. Placing my self-worth upon my corporate and financial success was one of the lessons that you learnt. That's probably not the best way. Striving to succeed was not quenching my appetite for complete satisfaction. So, what you're chasing wasn't giving you the satisfaction. And then you came to the realisation that you had so much to give back because of your life and decided to be of service to others. So, there's sort of 3 points that you pulled out from your experience after you got out of the prison. And let's just touch on that first one, placing self-worth upon your own self-worth on your corporate and financial success. What's your lesson that you learnt about that?
It was another beautiful perspective that I took when I thought, hang on a minute, society is telling me that if I build this big business and I've got this managing director title and I'm rolling with the business owners and business managers in that corporate world, and I've got the financial abundance to come with it. I didn't quite get there in terms of the financial abundance, but I was getting there. But I was completely unfulfilled. So when the business did fail, it was another sense of relief. As also with my relationship, because once I'd come home a very different man, one that I knew that I was coming home and she might not know who I am or how I want to live, and that had its own side effects. But so again, losing the business and losing the relationship was another sense of release for me. So again, I realized that I wasn't getting fully satisfied by what society, I guess, in some terms,
Yeah.
says that success and about well-being was all about. And I remember sitting there at the workshop, the business workshop, after I'd left home, and broke my kid's heart. I'm telling them that me and their mum weren't going to continue in the relationship. I remember being in the workshop. The workshop was going to go too, because we had to hand the business over soon. We'd made that decision, but there was a sense of excitement, right? Because here I am. One, I haven't had my freedom taken away. I've got everything to live for, and I've got this whole blank canvas laying in front of me. No business anymore, no relationship that I really wasn't being satisfied by anyway. So I've got this huge opportunity, and it wasn't like I was in court. So I had this beautiful benchmark to say, hey, I might not have a home, I might not have everything, but you know what I've got? I've got my happiness.
Yeah.
And I connected to that feeling and that excitement of, guess what? I get to now write my own journey. It's not up to the court. It's not up to the prison system. It's not up to a partner. I am just me, and I'm sitting here. And so I got this wave of excitement. And I remember sitting in the workshop and thinking to myself, you know what? Never again will I do something that doesn't fully and completely satisfy me again. And I guess to some degree, we all have to do that to some degree. But I remember not wanting to contribute the bulk of my life in terms of my work to something that wasn't making me happy. And that was the catalyst for me to look back on my life and say, I've got all this lived and learned experience. And there's, you had the Tony Robbins of the world. And I thought, you know what, if anyone else can do it after what I've been through, and I'm going to put my life back together. And I remember, I just want to answer that question. Yeah. What was my aspiration? My aspiration was, and still always is, to be the most successful ex-prisoner that's ever walked the face of the planet.
Right.
And put myself back together in that regard. And it was wanting to be in service and give all this experience back, and what we can do with the right approach, and not having this glass ceiling. Oh, you can't get a job, you're an ex-prisoner. You can't do this, you're an ex-prisoner. You've got, you're a convicted drug trafficker. So what are you going to do? Well, I'll show you what I'm going to do. Right? This is what I'm going to do. And now I had this drive to want to give back the things I took away. It was almost a part of my reconciliation, and giving back again the things that I'd taken away. I knew I'd hurt a lot of people, and now I've got an opportunity to do good for people. That was again the embarking on my coaching journey.
And tell us about that, the type of things that you're doing. You're speaking at schools and men's sheds and bloke support groups. That's part of what you're doing. Working on a book, podcast. Talk us through all the stuff that you're doing to try and give back on the lessons that you've learnt.
Yeah, so obviously went back to study coaching, and get some qualifications in that area. Done hypnotherapy, NLP training, breath work, a number of components that were, I guess, skills and qualifications. But I had all that experience, so bolt the two together, and I had a powerful skill set to deliver a clientele. I started a group called the Man to Man Brotherhood, which is a men's support group. We've got over 1,000 guys in there, because I knew that the catalyst for me was having a safe place to become vulnerable and talk, and men getting together and being vulnerable together generally supports that journey. So he started the Man to Man also podcast, which is no longer running anymore, but that was a component early on of my coaching journey. Yeah, was really reaching out to clients and got really good reaction, had a lot of success articulating my journey and helping people to understand their own vulnerability and their own trauma and putting themselves back together. So yeah, there's that part of the journey. Got an opportunity to be part of 2 international best-selling books as a co-author, and telling my journey, telling my story from a place of authenticity, which I found incredibly healing, because it's all just it's not anything that I had fear in articulating.
Yeah.
And then progressed on. I wrote a movie concept in prison called The Perfect World, The Power of Human Potential, which is how the world could transition just like an individual would, that the world could transition through this beautiful phase of healing. That's being brought to life at the moment. I'm now a director of my own energy drink company, Elevate Energy, which is coming to life. You see the banner down below. I'm a radio show host of a show called Personal Power. I'm a radio show host and Edge Radio Australia, a great family team here. I'm in the studio right now, so big shout out to Aaron and Edge Radio. So thanks for having me here and supporting this podcast journey. So there's a lot of good stuff, and I'm just being called more and more to step out onto a global stage and bring my voice of hope, healing, and transformation to the world. And this is my passion. This is my purpose. And yeah, I'm just super inspired to keep keep following what my calling is and what I know fully satisfies me, and that is being the fullest expression of the person that I was always born to become, free from trauma, free from fear, and free from judgment.
Could you have ever seen yourself, all the different stages of Andrew? Yeah, the angry young man, the bloke in the army, comes out angry, underworld, bikie world. Could you ever see yourself sitting here talking like this?
No. And I'm incredibly humbled by my own journey. I'm incredibly humbled by everybody's journey, right? Because we've all got a story to tell, and it's through sharing this journey and through articulating my journey from, again, this place of authenticity and being. I take my role, my role model, role in society very seriously, because there's more that is needed in this regard. You know, a judgment of me and my past is you're not judging me, you're judging a part of yourself, right? Because I believe that there should be this level of self-awareness in society that is lacking. So when I stand up and when I talk to people like yourselves, or I do a podcast, or I write my journey in a book, this is a privilege to me. And it's an absolute relief that I've found what I'm most passionate and most purposeful about, and that is using my lived and learned experience to benefit others and to give back, and be in service for society. And it's incredibly fulfilling, and I remain incredibly inspired. And I've always wanted to think that I could get here, and I'm still a work in progress. There's no such thing as being perfect. Every day I strive to be a better sense of myself than yesterday, and give more components of myself from a place of openness to dive into my own journey and help people to understand that we need to do this daily. It's not a destination. We're never going to get somewhere.
Interesting point that you make, Andrew, that it is a work in progress. Like when you got out from prison, people could have looked at you and, okay, well, he's channeling himself into being successful in the business world, not through crime, but through genuine hard work. But that was sort of, you went off kilter on that. You learnt some lessons from there. So I suppose every day is a learning lesson for you.
Yeah, it is. And when we journey through life and we drop out of our head and drop into our heart space, because at the moment we're very thinking beings, right?
Yeah.
And we're conditioned that way. We're programmed that way. When we drop into our heart space and learn how to feel truth, and when we know how to feel satisfaction and feel what it is to be vulnerable, and give ourselves permission to feel and be an emotional being, not a thinking being, which there's a lot of overthinking going on. It's incredibly liberating, and it's a practice. It doesn't just happen. It's got to be a conscious choice to say, hey, I want to harmonize. I want to give myself permission to feel and permission to express from that place of freedom and vulnerability. And I can tell you it's been an incredibly challenging but completely satisfying journey to be applying this perspective and this approach to life. And it's a daily practice, and we're never going to be perfect at it. But again, if we can set ourselves free from the shackles and the confines of our past, and not be too engaged in our future, what happens is we become very present in the moment, in the now. And the more practice you can do at that, the more deeply satisfied you can be by just being alive, but just being grateful for having the opportunity to breathe, to have the opportunity to observe the sun and feel the sun on your skin. There's these little components to life that we can overlook, but that are so important in us realizing the fullest satisfaction of what it means to be human. And the four pillars of our existence that I teach us are mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical. We've got to honor ourselves in those four components of our life, and a lack of balance in one inevitably affects the other three. So again, it's this holistic approach, holistic wellness practicing approach that I take to identify that as a complete being, we need to acknowledge and understand and know how to apply this perspective across those four different pillars. And again, something I'm not getting perfect myself, but something that if we lay the right foundation, we can absolutely become free from ourselves.
I think, you make a point there. You're not perfect yourself, and I think, you talk, and I see meditation, getting that life balance and all that. And people say to me, because I've been doing that for years, meditating, yoga, all sorts of different things. And they go, but you're still cranky. And I'm going, I would be a lot more cranky if I wasn't doing it. I'm just trying to be better better person than what I would be if I wasn't doing that. So it is that combination of things, and I think it's important. And you're talking about like the men's sheds and man to man and open discussion. It does get lost, and look, we're sounding like it's chauvinistic because we're only talking about men. Women are going through their problems too, but yeah, in a man's world, you don't show weakness, you don't show vulnerability. You talked about the when you got out of prison, when you separated from your partner and leaving the family home and your kids, and you felt, am I abandoning my kids like happened to me? Is it going to be a repeat of what my childhood was? I had a marriage separation, and I still remember the day that I left the family home is one of the most traumatic memories I have in my life. It cuts you through to the soul. But back when that happened, I wasn't talking to my mates about it. How you going? I'm all right. Yeah, that type of thing. And yeah, you need to talk about those emotions. Otherwise, you bottle it up, and you can get through it, but it's not easy.
And it's important. It's an important process to understand, right? Because if we don't apply the process effectively, we become the product and the victim of the circumstances, rather than we say, you know what, I can still be struggling, but love and nurture myself. I can still be struggling and still speak about the very things that I'm cut to the soul, like you say, about, and be vulnerable to my own journey. And I think if we can get better at that, whether you're a man, woman, or child, doesn't matter. It's through human connection and through being completely open and vulnerable that we allow ourselves permission to heal effectively. And this all comes down to self-love. We can get it wrong. We can be cranky. We can project. We can react, and we can come out the other side. And instead of self-sabotaging and trying to hide and trying to deny and trying to blame, and say, you know what, I didn't get that right. And like you say, I'm grumpy today, but I'm not as grumpy because I've done my grounding, I've done my breath work, I've done my meditation. I'm honoring myself, I'm loving myself. And even though I'm not perfect, it doesn't mean I have to sabotage myself or make myself a worse version of myself yesterday. And this is, again, applying the right thought processes and the right emotional approach to our daily life that sees us on a trajectory of becoming a better sense of ourselves, a more satisfied being, a better person than what we were yesterday. And society's conditioned us and programmed us to think that self-care and self-love is selfish. It's not just important, it's absolutely critical. If you don't know how to love yourself, and we think that self-love is giving to other people, being in service, and I'm helping people, I'm doing this, I'm giving to my kids, I'm giving to my sporting club, I'm giving. But what do? We come to an empty cup. You can't pour from an empty cup. It's only through self-giving to self that you learn how to reconcile your own energy and become the fullest sense of yourself. Then it's, and again, it's counterintuitive, but through doing that for self, you become a better self to give to your family, your sporting club, your relationship. That's how we fill our own cup. Again, self-giving to self.
I'm glad you clarified that, Andrew, because if you work on yourself too much, people can often a bit selfish, gets up and trains every morning or does meditation, do this, do that. You got to keep yourself together to support the people around you, because if you're a broken human being, you're not good to anyone.
And you're exactly right. But that's why society thinks it's selfish, because our culture identifies the investment as self as being selfish. Well, we're so distracted. There's so much noise going on in the world. There's so much expectation on men to provide, and for society, both on men and women, to say you're supposed to get your ultimate sense of satisfaction through spending 7, 8, 9 hours a day at work, working for someone that you don't know, you don't like, you don't respect, right? And that's where we're supposed to be fully and completely satisfied. It is wrong. It's not right. Therefore, the more time you've got to invest in yourself to counterbalance the dissatisfaction that you might feel holistically in what we spend the bulk of our time doing. So it becomes even more important that we invest in self and spend more time looking after ourselves holistically in those 4 pillars of our existence. Otherwise, you are not going to know on this side of eternity what a fully satisfied life is all about. And you might not know what it is perfectly, but I tell you what, we've got to know what it is more than what we're experiencing right now.
Yeah. Well, there's some very wise words. And one thing I've found through police career and also the work that I'm doing in speaking to people whose life has been at the razor edge of existence, traumatic events, lifestyle, prison, and that. Quite often they come, if they learn from it, there's an almost Zen-like feeling that I get from people that, to me, it looks like you're someone that doesn't sweat the little things. Big things you might worry about, but the little things aren't worth worrying about. And I've seen that time and time again with people that have been through trauma or survived and come out the other end, that there seems to be a greater understanding of what life is about. And you've touched on so much. You've taken us on a journey. I'm exhausted from your journey. It's tiring, but
I'm only just getting warmed up. If you knew me, you'd know this is just what I do, mate.
I love the fact that what you're so passionate about, and you put in, you could have been written off. The moment you went into jail, you could have been written off, and people go, he's a debt to society, he'll never repay it. I think you are repaying it, and your message is very important that you can turn your life around. So I hope you keep up the good work and keep promoting what you're doing. And if people want to reach out to you or whatever, how do they find you?
Yeah, big presence on social media, Gary. And look, thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to join you on the podcast. Congratulations on everything you're doing. I know you've got your own journey, and we've all got a story to tell, but congratulations on yours as well. Reach out to me on social media. It's not under Andrew, it's under Drew Geldert. On TikTok, Insta, or Facebook is where I do my lives and where I do a lot of my messages and coaching. And if not, jump onto Edge Radio Australia, download the app. You can reach out to me there. Look forward to having people as a part of my social network and having the opportunity to be able to share this journey and to connect with people and again, just share what I'm passionate and purposeful about, Gary. So once again, thanks very much.
Well, it's nice to finish on a positive with a podcast called I Catch Killers. So thank you, Andrew.
That's right.
All the best, mate.
Thanks very much, Gary.
Cheers.